downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your host, Andrew T. Evans, with special guest, Chris Stefanik.
Woo! Woo! Let's just get it going on right now. Ladies and gentlemen, you have downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your hosts. I am Andy Evans, and you know who is joining me all the way out in the friggin' Caribbean to do this Buckeye Leafcast after a huge Ohio State win over those smelly rodents up north. My man with the plan. We about to get weird on this, folks, and we appreciate you downloading this version of the show. My man, the intergalactic Buckeye fan himself, Mr. Chris Stefanik.
Oh my God, it's so glorious.
Woo! Chris, let me just say this. You suck and I suck. Because we both predicted our Ohio State Buckeyes to lose this football game. You, in particular, said it would get ugly. The Buckeyes would lose bad. I said, let's pull it back a bit. Ohio State will lose this football game, but not by that much. And instead, Chris Stefanik, the Ohio State Buckeyes, the 10th ranked Ohio State Buckeyes, laid it down on their arch rival, the 4th ranked Michigan Wolverines, 62-39. And there are a number of things to talk about this football game, Chris, and I cannot wait to hear your assessment of this football game as it's going on. I am pleading with myself to not contact you because you told me I'm going to be away. I cannot watch this while it's going on. I'm going to watch it tape delay, and I'm going nuts. I mean, my brain, I'm just like, oh my God, Chris, like I'm thinking about you. I'm serious, dude. I'm sitting here thinking about you throughout the game, and I'm like, oh my God, Chris, like at this point when you're finally able to see the game and you're able to watch it, like you're going nuts. And oh my God, Chris Stefanik, can you believe what our 10th ranked Ohio State Buckeyes did once again to those smelly, fat, stinky rodents up north in the Jimmy Harbaugh khaki wearing pieces of crap? I mean, oh my God, I'm just going to shut up and I'm going to let you talk, but you can obviously feel and hear my excitement for this win. I mean, this, Chris, was one of the greatest wins within the last 20 to 30 years in Ohio State football history. I mean, I've got to put this right up there within the top 3. And that's just me talking, and you and I, we've seen a lot of Ohio State, Michigan football games where it's come down to, this and the that and the that and the this, and there's so many heartbreaking Ohio State wins, but oh my God, Chris, can you believe what we saw on Saturday afternoon? Absolutely unfrigging believable.
Well, I think Genghis Khan said it best when he was asked, what is best in life? He replied, to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentations of their women. Oh my God, it was just so glorious. I've got a quote for you. Most people know.
The lamentations of the women. That's great.
Yeah. Most people think of that as being Arnold. That was actually they stole that in the Conan movie from Genghis Khan. But so here is what if you wake up in the morning, you're a Michigan fan, you pick up the Detroit Free Press.
And I know a few Michigan fans who woke up the next morning not feeling very good. Didn't read the Detroit Free Press, but nonetheless.
Yeah, Detroit Free Press. The headline: Michigan football overrated. Outclassed and historic loss to Ohio State. So already it's glorious, Already it's glorious.
Yeah.
And let me just skip to like my favorite quote because there's a lot of. Well, here I'll read the first couple lines. So there have been close games and tough calls and bad breaks and talent gaps. All sorts of reasons for all sorts of losses. But there's never been anything like what happened Saturday afternoon in Ohio Stadium, where the Buckeyes didn't just eviscerate and embarrass Michigan. They stole a chunk of their soul.
Yeah.
This is what they're writing in their own papers. Oh my God. It's just freaking, it's glorious. There's just no other way to describe it, but just, I'm giddy.
So I'm going to ask you this and then we'll start jumping into the game itself. You did tell me, hey, I'm not going to be able to watch this game live as it's happening. Do not text me. Don't Facebook message me. Don't call me. Don't send smoke signals. Nothing. I don't want to know what's going on until I can watch this game the very next day. So, Ohio State, Michigan kicks off Saturday, November 24th at noon. How long was it until you were able to watch the game in its entirety, or at least highlights? Were you able to watch this game in its entirety, and did you watch this game in its entirety?
Well, we live in such wonderful times that I'm on a plane flying to the Cayman Islands over the middle of the Atlantic, and I'm actually watching the game live on the plane. So that was kind of cool.
Now, wait a minute. I thought when you're riding on a plane, you're supposed to turn everything off.
First of all, they had it actually on the plane. It was like I wasn't watching it on my laptop or anything like that, or on my phone.
No, wait,
this
time
was
out.
Just you.
Time out. You're flying on a plane, and they are airing a live broadcast of the Ohio State-Michigan game. Seriously.
Yes.
That right there, Chris, that right there should tell you where this rivalry is at. You're on a friggin' plane flying to the halfway to the moon, and they've got it while you're flying on the plane. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, they had all the networks there, so you could pick whatever network you wanted to watch. And, I just, of course, put that one on. But there was other Ohio State fans on there that were like, OHing each other, and it was pretty, it was fun. It was fun. I didn't get, but we did get, I got to halftime, and they're like a few minutes into halftime, and the signal went out, and I didn't get it back. And so then I went several hours before I was able to, I think it was like 7:00 at night. We got back, we got into the Caribbean, we went to the beach, we went and had dinner, and then I get back in the room, and I then, another, great thing about the times we live in, not only can you watch live TV on planes, but like basically every major game, I think maybe even every Division I game, they put it up on YouTube, like usually within 12 hours. And this one being a major game, it was just a handful of hours later, they had the whole game up on YouTube again. So I sat down at like 7 p.m. Saturday night and watched the game in its entirety from start to finish, and watched the first half again. And so I got to see it.
You saw the first half on the plane while you're flying halfway to Mars, and you're watching the first half live, essentially, maybe a little bit of a delay, but essentially you're watching the first half live on the plane, but then after that, you did not get to see the second half like you did halfway to Mars live on the
Well, think about how that half ended. So the half ended, I'm feeling really good.
Nuts! It was nuts!
And then in a couple snaps of the ball, 10 seconds, Michigan puts up 13 points. Would have been
oh my God
14 if Harbaugh was an idiot and went for 2.
21 to 6, and then all of a sudden Michigan moves down the field, they score. Then crazy muffed kickoff, Demario McCall, they score again. But if Jimmy Cax had just said, you know what, we're going to go ahead and just kick extra points instead of going for 2. What an idiot, dude. What an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It made no sense. And then later in the game, he's down by, what was it, 15 or something. And he goes for 2 again because it would get him to a point where he'd only be down by I forget what it was, but it was basically if he went for 2, he would only be down by 14 points. So I guess he was down by 16 and went by for 2 again. And I'm like, you realize had you just kicked the extra point in the second quarter, you could just kick the extra point right now and you'd be down by 14. But because you were a moron and went for 2-point conversion, you don't go for a 2-point conversion in the second quarter because you don't know what's going to happen. You take the point, But anyways, that was the least of things.
That was early in the fourth quarter after they had scored on another Nico Collins crazy touchdown catch where he burnt Kendall Sheffield. We'll get into that in a minute. But, the amount of times that Jimmy Cax went for 2, not like it really actually mattered because of the final score, but still, there were... Maybe psychologically that puts his team on a whole different level. I don't think it would have, but yeah, dumb calls to go for 2 as many times as he did.
Yeah, it's not playing the percentages. You don't in the fourth quarter. It's acceptable if the numbers work out right, but you don't do it in the second quarter because you just don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, the way things ended up, had he just kicked extra points, he would have been. It would have all worked out, right? He didn't need to do that. But you mentioned the muff by McCall. I'm sitting there and I'm sitting there thinking okay, if Michigan wins this game and they win it by a score, or even if they don't win it by a score, just the fact that totally changed the momentum. Everybody's going to look back on this game this is going to be like a Bill Buckner moment. Bill Buckner never lived that down. No, and I'm like, he will never live this down. And Buckeye Nation, this is going to be, I don't know if you're a Browns fan at all or not. I hope for your sake you're not.
Hey, I'm a Brownies and Bengals fan. Come on, man. I'm an Ohio guy. I'm an Ohio guy. And the Brownies beat the Bengals in Cincinnati today, just to let you know.
Right. So anyway, when I was a kid, there was the whole, the drive, the fumble, there's all, it's like, yeah. Ernest Biner never lived that down in Cleveland. They're like, dude, you fumbled the freaking ball.
Ernest Biner was a hell of a running back. Seriously.
And the thing is, other than that fumble, it was the one, it totally tarnished his career in Cleveland. Even though he was a great back and otherwise was amazing, and it's not fair to him,
But
I'm sitting there thinking, this is DeMario. This is going to be, this is his Bill Buckner moment if Michigan comes back and wins this game. Especially if they win it by a score. But because, we had the momentum, we had the lead, and had the ball, and he frickin' just completely muffs it. So I was really glad for him so that he wouldn't have to, bear that cross for the rest of his life.
I think what you're alluding towards is the fact that after he muffed that kickoff, he had a great 30-some yard catch, I believe. Let me look here.
Yeah, on a wheel route in that second half.
Yeah.
No, that was actually the second quarter, wasn't it?
Yes, no, it was the last
when they went down and got that field goal.
Exactly. Last drive of the second quarter, Ohio State comes down and kicks a field goal to take a 24-19 halftime lead. But Demario McCall caught a 33-yard wheel route on that final drive to set him up for a field goal. So, a little bit of redemption for Demario McCall. And I felt bad because I really thought that Demario McCall all year should be fielding punts, kicks. He's the top of the man on the depth chart. But then when they take the field and they're fielding kicks, it's Johnny Dixon, it's KJ Hill, it's CJ Saunders. It's, somebody different than Demario McCall, who's actually listed as the top kick and punt returner. So for Demario McCall on that last drive there, the second quarter, to catch that pass, that wheel route, that 33-yarder. A lot of redemption for him. A lot of redemption.
Right. Yeah, and DeMario McCall, he's an example of one of the things Ohio State's done wrong this year, which is not playing guys on the bench that seem like obvious choices to upgrade over the starters, you know? So we lamented long about Brendan White when he came in and was like light years better than both Isaiah Pryor and Deshaun Wynn. We're like, what are they doing not playing this guy? Oh my God. Like, this is what you had, and you had Deshaun Wynn ahead of this guy? Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
You know? And it took an injury. Yep. It took an injury and like a targeting call for this guy to even make the field, or else we still might be sitting there watching, you know, Isaiah Pryor and Deshaun Wynn out there. But it was like, what the heck is going on? You know, then in this, Chris Olave, you know, he comes in, and it's like it was only because Austin Mack went out that he gets into the lineup, and already I'm like, okay. Not only, I mean, he clearly looks better than like Ben Victor, who's been in the lineup the whole year, and honestly, I think he looks better than Mack. You know, I'm like, why is it take an injury to get this guy in there when he looks to me like he's clearly better? And then McCall, the same thing. Johnny Dixon. I mean, Johnny Dixon had to remember he had that awful. He had the week. Remember he had the return to the 1 yard line on a kick return. Do you remember that where he barely got?
No, I don't remember that. What game was this?
Oh my God! It was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. He had a kick return where he didn't fair catch it, and then what happened? Did he let it bounce? He let it bounce. I'm trying to remember the exact, but I remember he almost didn't get out of the end zone. He had to like leap forward, reach. You know, like you reach the ball ahead to score a touchdown when you get close. You kind of stick it out there. He had to reach the ball ahead just to not get a safety on a kick return, Andy. On a kick return, I'm like, how do you like return it to the 1 yard line on a kick return? Your own one. And then he had, you know, last week versus Maryland, you remember like their first kick of the game, Maryland scores a touchdown, they go to kick off. He doesn't field it, thinking, I guess he thought it was going to go out of bounds. And instead, it takes a bounce and doesn't go out of bounds. Maryland jumps on it. It's a live ball. And so it was like an onside kick, even though they weren't trying to onside kick it. They just did a little pooch kick. And Johnny Dixon, it took that kind of two crazy blunders, returning it to the 1 yard line and failing to catch the kick versus Maryland. So they finally pulled Johnny Dixon out. McCall gets in there and like right away has a big return versus Maryland, you know, which was really key in that game.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, you know, he has a nice return versus Michigan. I mean, he did have the terrible muff, but at any rate, you know, it's Johnny Dixon. I was reading about like after, you know, last week after Maryland when McCall came in, I read where they said Johnny Dixon has never returned a touchdown or a kick for a touchdown, not only at Ohio State, but even in high school. And it's like, okay, why do you have this guy who's not even in high school wasn't that good?
Well,
you know. So at any rate, that's. I don't want to harp too much about my complaints about stuff, but you know, like now watch. I'm like, the coaches have been saying Wyatt Davis is a total stud, but they've not been playing him.
Yeah.
Demetrius Knox went down at the end of that game, you know, which is a shame because the line played great. The line really pulled together.
Terrible to see Demetrius Knox carted off like that. I mean, you could tell the pain in his eyes. That sucks.
Yeah, the injury like sounds awful. I Googled it and I was like, oh my God, that sounds terrible. But he's got this foot thing where I forget what it's called, but he has this foot injury where like the bones get displaced, and you look at like the X-rays of it, and you're like, oh my God, that's what happened to his foot. Anyway, I'm like, watch now, like Wyatt Davis is going to come in and be like, you know, the second coming of Orlando Pace or something, and we're going to be like, okay, why did it take an injury to get this guy in there when like the offensive line was pretty poor by Ohio State standards, certainly in run blocking for most of the year, you know? So that's I don't understand where these personnel decisions, you know, we've talked about Hilliard looking better in his brief stints than some of the starting linebackers, but
do you realize though Do you realize, Chris, that Demetrius Knox, I mean, he got injured with like 30 seconds left to go in the game. in the game. 30 seconds left. That's it.
Well, here's the one other complaint I have. We've talked about this many times. Is, I say that it should be the playoffs. It should be an 18 playoff. If you're a one-loss conference champion, you get an automatic bid.
Yeah.
And then that eliminates this beauty pageantry stuff, where like if Urban Meyer, you've got to leave your starters in there and try to run out the score these last couple games. Otherwise, he could have just had the scrubs in. He could have just been, having Master Teague run it up the middle or something, But instead, he's got to be out there trying to run up the score. And and Demetrius Knox, you lose him, he's done for the year. And it's a shame. This whole beauty pageant thing is really annoying.
Here's the thing. Urban was deep in Michigan's territory at the end of the game, and he decided to sit on the football rather than punching it in for 69 or at least 68 points and either kicking an extra point or pulling a Woody and going for 2 to put 70 on the board. And he was asked about that after the game, like, hey, why didn't you try and stick it in for another touchdown? And he was basically like, hey man, I've got great respect for this rivalry. I've got great respect for this game. Urban wants to win this game by smashing the opponent, that team up north, at all costs, except when it comes to sportsmanship in the end of the game. You're up by 23 touchdowns. Come on, man. You don't need to score again. You do not need to score again. And he was specifically asked, today's college landscape, trying to put points on the board and this and that. Why didn't you go for it? And he was just like, I got too much respect for this rivalry, for this game. And that right there makes me respect Urban a whole lot more. That he wasn't willing to pull a Woody and go for 2 because he couldn't go for 3. You know what I mean?
I hear what you're saying. I mean, I love Urban Meyer.
Seriously.
I really love Urban Meyer. And what he's doing is unprecedented in many ways. I mean, 62 points that Ohio State put on Michigan. That's the most scored in the series history. Heck,
by Ohio State.
It's the most points Michigan has ever given up in regulation to anyone, ever.
Yeah, the most points that anybody's ever scored against Michigan ever in their entire history, along with the most points that Ohio State has ever scored against Michigan in the rivalry of the game. Unbelievable.
Right. So I mean, there was like an overtime once where Michigan gave up more than that. But in regulation, the most they'd ever given up is 62. And Ohio State, they had never given up more than 50 points to Ohio State in the 114 previous meetings between the teams. Another little thing, Jimmy Khaki Pants, first Michigan coach to ever lose his first 4 games against Ohio State.
The only coach, Chris, that has lost 4 straight to Ohio State is Jimmy Cax. And now Urban himself, as well as the school as a whole, can now brag 7 straight wins against Michigan. Never in the history. I mean, 6 was the benchmark, and that was back in the Jimmy T days, and he would have had 7 straight had the 2010 win not been yanked away because of sanctions. So now Urban Meyer,
as far as I'm concerned, they tied the record with 7.
Yeah,
I didn't vacate those wins.
I didn't vacate
those wins. Gene Smith might have vacated those wins. I did not vacate those 2010 wins. No way.
Hey, I've got a Sugar Bowl championship hat, and it was funny because I was wearing it out one time, and this guy looks at me and goes, "What's that like to wear a blank hat?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude?" He's like, "Yeah, that Sugar Bowl, man, that didn't count." I'm like, Look, motherfucker, I remember watching that game on TV. I remember watching Ohio State beat Arkansas 31-27 in that bowl game. I remember that, all right? You may not remember it, or if you do, you're going by the NCAA books, but guess what? I'm not, so fuck you.
Nice.
So I'm with you, dude.
Yeah. So
as far as I'm concerned, Urban did tie Jimmy Tressel for 7 straight wins in a row. But technically, by the books, he is the leader.
Meyer is also now 7-0 as an underdog at Ohio State. I mean, think how crazy that is. When he's been an underdog, he's 7-0, which means like the other team like was in theory a better team. I mean, coming into this game, Michigan had been the better team this year. And he not only beat him, but beat the door. So, but he did that 7 times. He's 7-0. Well, I don't know what's more amazing, that he's 7-0 when an underdog, or that in 7 years at Ohio State, he's only been an underdog 7 times. Think about that. I mean, like that's pretty freaking crazy that he's only been an underdog 7 times in 7 years at Ohio State.
7 years at Ohio State at what? Let's say, well, he was 12-0 in 2012.
So he was. I know 2 of those.
Let's say an average. Let's say an average of 13 games in 7 years. 13 times 7 is 91. 91. We're just gonna go with an average of 91 games in the last 7 seasons. He's been an underdog. What'd you say? 7 times?
7 times.
And of those 7 times, Chris,
it's pretty crazy.
He has won each and every game. So once again, Urban Frank Meyer, the psychology major from Cincinnati, or the University of Cincinnati, is going to play it out on you. And not only that, dude, not only is he going to be like, okay, I'm an underdog, I'm going to smash your butthole up into your face. That's what I'm going to do to you right now because you think that I cannot win this football game. Chris, like I said, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Did you think, and you didn't think, and neither of us thought that this was going to be possible, where not only was Ohio State going to win this football game, but they were going to beat the ever-living piss out of Michigan. I really thought this was the year, and it wasn't. I mean, this is crazy, dude.
Well, I mean, who had Ohio State winning 62-39? Come on. If you can show me one person out there who had that winning 62-39,
by 3 touchdowns,
I will eat my shirt,
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
nobody out there. Nobody.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of Buckeye fans, a lot of Buckeye analysts who had Ohio State winning a squeaker, a 27-26 kind of game. And, and we said last week, both of us said, hey, if Ohio State wins, I won't be shocked. I think Ohio State can win this. There's,
but not by 20
there's scenarios where they could win this, right?
Not by
I didn't see them blowing the doors off of them.
Seriously.
So, yeah, I mean, some of the things that would have needed to go right for Ohio State to win was like winning the turnover battle, not making less mistakes, but players stepping up, making adjustments, there's all these like things, and like it just seemed like a whole bunch of them went Ohio State's way. Now, granted, another thing that's pretty interesting about this too is not only, I would have thought for them to win as big as they did, that it would have had to have been a perfect game. And they really weren't perfect. Like, we already talked about the DeMario McCall muff, a lot of penalties that were like, some of them were highly questionable. Like, Haskins gets like a
5
targeting call against him, and Urban, instead of the call being against Michigan, Urban Meyer gets a 15-yard penalty. There was all these things that were like,
yeah.
And they still, even without every ball bouncing their way, hammered them. So it's like, I'll say this. We talked before. I said, I'm like, Andy, like last week, I'm like, how many times have we talked about Ohio State out-coaching somebody else this year? I'm like, have they done it once? I'm like, they've been out-coached damn near every week on both sides of the ball.
Pretty much.
This year they came out and they out-coached on both sides of the ball there, especially Ryan Day. Oh my God. Like he just, I mean, part of it was like this Don Brown guy, like, I know he's supposed to be like a, they need to make some adjustments, like, are you making adjustments? Because like Ohio State's doing a whole lot of the same stuff over and over.
Hey, hold on. You said Don Brown and then you cut out for like 10 seconds. So maybe go back to Don Brown.
Okay, so I was saying, well, what is this guy making adjustments? Because it's kind of like you and me were calling for the coaches, Ohio State's coaches, to make adjustments all year, and they were slow to come, if at all. I'm not sure that this guy was making adjustments, because it's like Ohio State, they just kept running crossing routes all freaking day, and the guy were getting wide. Like Michigan's players couldn't hang with them, and a few times when they'd either run the crossing route or they'd fake the crossing route, like they'd start to go across the field and then stop and turn back the other way, like do like an inside out route and be wide open on those, right? And oh my God, well, here's another thing that was interesting too, and is I had, earlier in the year, I talked about how Ohio State doesn't go very deep, and it's causing a problem. It's part of the reason why they can't run the balls, because they, Haskins never takes the top off the defense to like keep the safeties honest. The safeties are able to like get up in the box, and it crowds everything. It makes the running game hard. It makes the passing game hard, because they throw everything short, and the defenders are all right there, right? I'm like, they need to take some more deep shots. They actually, I pointed out that they actually, like, statistically were taking less deep shots with Haskins than they were with JT Barrett. When JT Barrett was quarterback, I was calling for them to do more deep shots here, but he was even doing less than that. Well, last week against Maryland, they started throwing a bunch of deep shots and ended up scoring 52 points. This week, they did a bunch of deep shots and scored 62 versus the number one defense in the country. So it's like, I think that, and then I'm reminded of like, whenever Cardale took over in 2014 for those final 3 games, they mixed in a bunch of deep shots. And it's like, when you do that and you can do it successfully, the offense opens so wide up, because it's not just, are you killing on the deep shots, like completing big plays, but now it's like, they're so worried about the deep shots that like all the other stuff opens up. The safeties can't play up, and now the running game opens up. Now those little crossing routes and the slants and the short passes are that much more. Are that much more open, right? And it just really it's attacking the whole field that makes that offense click. And in these last 2 games, they started taking deep shots, and they have 114 points in 2 games to show for it. So that was another nice little thing that we've seen Ryan Day, work into the offense, and it's been great when they've been taking those deep shots. I mean, they were either completing them or nearly completing them, like the Michigan defender would not be able to keep up with the guy, but either Ben Victor would drop the ball or Haskins would overthrow him or whatever. But it would be like close, like, man, it was really close. They almost had it. Or then this happened a lot. They get the guy in the pass interference call, because like Michigan knows, they're like, well, I better grab this guy, because otherwise it's going to be a 50-yard touchdown. And that works out pretty good too. I mean, I'll take those pass interference calls, and there were several of those based off of those deep passes.
Well, you talk about penalties, and Ohio State 12 for 150 yards. Michigan, though, 7 for 72. And there was that second last drive of the second quarter, first half, that Ohio State was going down on, and Michigan had at least 2, maybe 3 pass interference calls on that one drive alone that allowed Ohio State to kick a field goal to go up 24-19. But when you look at the game and the final stats, it's kind of funny that a lot of people were like, the defense was so on point. The defense kicked ass. The defense. And I was like, I think it's relative, because when you look at what they allowed against Maryland the week before in overtime, 51 points,
right.
Everybody's like, 39 points, 401 total yards allowed against the, average Michigan offense. If it weren't for the 62 points scored by this offense, Chris, Ohio State loses this football game 39-17. If Michigan's defense, so staunch, top-ranked national defense, especially against the pass, comes out and plays the way that everybody thought they would, or were hoping they would, and they didn't do that. And that's why Ohio State and in part the defense looked as good as it did, but they still allowed 39 points and 401 yards.
Yeah, it's weird. They gave up a ton of points, a ton of yards, but yeah, it still somehow felt like they won even on the defensive side of the ball. And
I know. I feel the same way. It's weird.
Yeah, it seemed like they had the Michigan out of sorts, playing from behind. Michigan likes to just run the ball and play like the ground and pound game, and they did a lot of that. And it was, to Ohio State's credit, they really shut that down. But it was they once they fell behind, they felt like they had to start passing. And man, the pass rush was really good, was really affecting.
It really was. It really was. I know. I feel the same way. But when you look at the final stats, you're like, wow, 39 points, 400 yards. It really didn't feel like Michigan would accomplish that in the game.
Well, another thing, I wonder if we're so used to Ohio State giving up like 80-yard plays, right? That's been like their MO. Like they give up these huge plays over and over, and like all these schools have set records. All these players have set records versus Ohio State's defense this year. Well, they really only gave up two big plays, and they gave up a 43-yard touchdown to Collins. That were you mentioned that one.
Yeah, Nico Collins.
Higdon had a 24-yard run, but other than that, there was when somebody broke a tackle from Michigan, there was another silver bullet there to tackle him, right? It wasn't like in these past games, well, if one guy breaks a tackle, if one guy takes a bad angle, the player's just gone and it's off to the races. And there's no safety back, right? And in this game, there was actually other guys there. And so you didn't see that. Because, broken tackles, they suck. You hate to see them. You want to see that, broken tackles, missed tackles to be in single digits, preferably low single digits, in the games. And Ohio State was getting them like double digits regularly this year. But when there's a missed tackle, that shouldn't be like, okay, now it's an 80-yard run. You know what I mean? There should be somebody else back there. I mean, unless it's like the guy who missed the tackle was the cornerback who was on an island. You know what I mean? Then okay, I get it. Or the safety, they pass it over the middle and the safety misses the tackle. But that's not what would happen. It would be like these little run plays, like the McFarland for Maryland. It looked like the second coming of, Walter Payton or something. I don't know. You miss
Tony Dorsett, Eddie George, Ezekiel Elliott. Yeah, take your pick.
Yeah, this guy, he'd miss a tackle at the line of scrimmage and he's off to the races for an 80-yard run. And you're like, where is the friggin' safety at in this? What's going on? And part of that was scheme. Schiano was getting out schemed and to be put in those places, but others, I mean, at this point, we didn't see that. That was. So I wonder if that's why it felt like, like Ohio State actually won Ohio State's defense versus Michigan's offense. They were getting pressure. They were forcing turnovers. They were, making them kind of win the game left-handed, right? Having to come from behind and throw the ball rather than doing the ground and pound. They were not getting the big plays that we're used to seeing them give up. So, I mean, yeah, they did get 39 points, but they had to do a lot of extended drives to make that happen. You know, it's interesting but yeah, you're right. Overall, the numbers look one way, but you know, I have to give it to Shiano. He did make some adjustments.
I know we've been ripping. I especially have been ripping on Shiano all this year, and let me tell you what, the defense they did. From a stat standpoint, you're like, what the fuck? But at the end of the day, I mean, they just kept making plays.
Right.
And I have to give it up to Shiano. Or is it just, he's like, dude, we've been running this stuff all year. I'm not going to change. This is the package that you're going to continue to run. And the defense finally stepped up. I mean, the linebackers, Malik Harrison, Tough Borland, you know, you look in the defensive secondary, there's still a couple of guys that just suck as far as I'm concerned. But other than that, Kendall Sheffield, still though, dude, yeah, from a stat standpoint, you look at it and they gave up a bunch of stuff, but at the end of the day, they really did come out and play.
Yeah. I mean, Malik Harrison, like you mentioned, he was just a werewolf. He was like the best. He was the best defensive player for either team on Saturday. You know, who would have thought that going into that game, right? But yeah, I mean, the pressure, they were getting pressure. And, you know, actually, even before that game, statistically, Ohio State was grading out as one of the better teams in the country at pass rushing. We weren't getting a ton of sacks, but like QB hurries. Believe it or not,
I know, isn't that crazy?
And they did this without, who was only, you know, the number one pass rusher in the country, a guy who was unblockable. I mean, you think of like the trickle down effect of losing Bosa, because like now instead of double teaming Bosa and you know, or putting you're chipping your extra guys over to him and all that, now they're getting to pick Draymond Jones or Chase Young or you know, whatever it is. They feel like there's this whole trickle down effect of that now, where and to think that Ohio State did this without him is even more impressive. And you know, it's Malik Harrison has been getting better as the years gone on to now, where he looks like a pretty good linebacker out there.
Oh, he's growing, dude. This last several games, man, he's been coming on.
He's been coming on. He's always had flashes, but he's been inconsistent. He's starting to be like consistent now. And you know, Jonathan Cooper has been very disappointing. Speaking of defensive ends, I really expected him.
He had a game. He had a game against the Wolverines.
Yeah, he really had a lot of nice plays. This was probably the best game I've seen him play in his career. You know, but he was a guy that coming into this season, fourth-year player, you really expected him to step up. When Nick Bosa went down, you expected him to step up. And he's been kind of invisible for most of the year. And so good for him. He put it together. I mean, a lot of guys in this game just seemed like they had, you know, career years. We talked about the Olave coming out party. How about that blocked punt? Did you hear in the press conference, Urban talking about the blocked punt?
Yeah, well, of course, sir.
Well, were you at the game? You were at the presser?
Yeah,
okay, cool.
Of course.
Dude,
yeah, man.
Was that stadium not rocking more than like ever before?
Here, this is what I'm going to...
It was a freaking constant, at least on TV. Just watching on TV, it just felt like they were roaring constantly.
Here's what's funny about sitting in the press box. You know, obviously it's enclosed glass, you know, the whole nine. Now they can open up those glass windows when it's hot out, but when it's cold, everything's closed and you kind of hear the crowd, but it does not seem as fervent as what you are hearing during the broadcast, or obviously if you're sitting there live in the stadium while it's happening. And I mean, you can hear, you know, the crowd, you know, go nuts and this and that, but it's muffled. It's very deadened. sitting there in the press box. So as I'm sitting there in the press box, I'll be honest with you, when the team came out, I was not impressed with the crowd noise for Ohio State. But of course, there were fireworks going off. There's smoke. There's, B-52 bombers driving or flying over the stadium, the Enola Gay. I mean, it's nuts. So it's like you got all this stuff going on. But to your point, in the press box, it didn't sound like it was that crazy, especially when Olave blocked that punt and Seven Banks returned it for the touchdown. And then I heard it on TV. And the crowd was going ballistic. And I'm like, okay, I guess things do sound different, obviously, in the press box. I'm not trying to sound snobby, but I mean, I'm sitting there in the press box. And dude, there's a guy sitting next to me from a radio station or whatever. And he's just basically kind of there hanging out, watching the game. And we're high-fiving each other. We're smacking each other in the arms and the legs. I mean, we're going nuts. And I turned to him and I said, look, I understand I'm a reporter. I report, I observe, and I report. But, first and foremost, I'm a Columbus, Ohio guy, okay? I was born and raised here in the Central Ohio area with a father who is absolutely nuts about Ohio State football and could seriously, I honestly believe could go head to head with the king of Ohio State football knowledge in Jack Park. I mean, my dad is right up there. My dad, I'm not just saying that just because he's my dad and, I love him and everything. My dad could go head to head with some of the best out there with Ohio State football knowledge. That being said, I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, I was born and raised, Ohio State football, Central Ohio. I'm an Ohio State graduate. My sister's an Ohio State graduate. My mom is an Ohio State graduate. We are Buckeyes. We are scarlet and gray all the way, Buckeyes till we die. And watching Ohio State laid the smackdown against Michigan while I'm sitting in the press box as an impartial reporter, and I can be an impartial reporter. But the Buckeye fan in me, I mean, like I said, we're smacking each other, we're high-fiving each other as all this is going on, and Chris Olave blocks that punt. And Seven Banks. 2 true freshmen, Chris. 2 true freshmen. We've got the pleasure to look forward to talking about the next at least, 2-3 years? 1 true freshman after scoring two straight 24-yard touchdown catches, blocks a punt, and then Seven Banks from Florida just doesn't even let it hit the ground. Just plucks it straight in the air and runs for the touchdown. I'm going nuts. I'm going nuts inside. I'm going nuts. I am an Ohio State fan, obviously, Chris. This is the Buckeye Leafcast, but, for me personally, to have this opportunity to sit in the press box, watch a game, and have to remain silent for the most part, but punch the guy in the arm next to me as he's punching me in the arm. It's a great feeling. It's a great friggin' feeling, dude. I love it.
Right. Yeah, man. All right, so let's see. What have we missed about this game? I mean, there's so much to talk about here. I've got pages of notes. How about Paris Gamble?
How about Paris Campbell? 5 catches, 114 yards, which actually, Chris, today has changed. Those stats have now changed. That 78-yard rushing touchdown that he was given credit for is now being placed as a pass.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Officially now as a pass. So Dwayne Haskins, his single season passing touchdowns record is not 41, it's 42. Yeah. And his overall single season passing yards record is not 4,003, it's 4,081, because that 78-yard touchdown, whatever you want to call it at this point, jet sweep.
Shovel pass, jet sweep.
Shovel pass, jet sweep, but because Dwayne Haskins, the ball was snapped into his hands and he tossed it just slightly forward into Paris Campbell's hands.
On TV,
that now goes down as a pass, not a rush.
Yeah, on TV, I thought I'm like, you couldn't really tell. It looked almost like it was a direct snap to Paris Campbell, in which case it would be a run. If they did a direct snap, that'd be like almost, just like if the quarterback does a run, right? Because it happened so fast, and they never really zoomed in to show it. So at least when I was watching it on YouTube, they have this thing on YouTube where they'll do the entire game in 40 minutes. And you don't get to see every single angle. They'll just go one play, next play, next play, next play. And you're getting a new play every 10 seconds, basically. And so you don't always get all these replays from every different angle. And from the angle, I replayed it myself I'm like, was that a pass? Did they direct snap it? I'm like, surely he didn't, because all season long we've been seeing that jet sweep where it's the shovel pass. But usually it's not quite so bang bang that you can't even tell whether it was pass or not. So, but it's funny. I wrote down in my notes. I always take notes when I'm watching these games. I wrote down that I was going to hate to see Paris Campbell graduate, and I actually did that before that 78-yard run in the fourth quarter. And because he's so fast and so dynamic. It's like, McLaurin and Dixon, we're going to lose them too, and they're good, but they're replaceable. A talent like Paris with his speed and size, it's special. He's got to be the fastest player Ohio State's had since Ted Ginn. And he's not like a little scat back doing this. You're talking about a guy that's 6'1", 208 pounds, and who's probably going to run I'm betting if he's healthy at the combine, we might see sub 4.3 for him, because he's got a gear that just nobody else has on this team, or nobody, the opponents either, for that matter. Fifth-year guy. Has been playing great. He's had a phenomenal career. He was a little slow starting, a bit of a late bloomer. I think he showed up at Ohio State on campus as a student, a member of the football team at 16 years of age. So I had never heard of a player coming out of high school that young, but I guess he was just, I don't know, he got pushed ahead in school or whatever, but he was a member of the football team at 16 years of age, maybe getting there early in the spring. And so he's a little, it took him a little while to just get physically mature and to become a good contributor to the team. And then he had to convert from running back to wide receiver. So he kind of had stone hands for a while there, and still doesn't, even this year, is his 5th year in the program, still doesn't always look like the smoothest of receivers, the most natural of receivers. But man, once he gets that ball in his hands, just look out. So I think he's going to have a good career with that size and speed. He's going to have a career in the NFL as well. I think he's a guy that's going to make some money for the next 10 years. So
well, and that's what Urban was talking about. Is hey, stick around, improve your draft stock. I'm telling you, you continue to be in this program for this year, especially with a guy like Dwayne Haskins throwing you the football. You are going to improve your draft stock. And I don't see why Paris Campbell, Terry McLaurin, Johnny Dixon 3 fifth-year seniors, as well as KJ Hale, a fourth-year junior, as well as, dude, we've talked about this, even Benjamin Victor and Austin Mack. Is he going to leave despite being injured? I mean, you've got at least 3, maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe up to 6 wide receivers that can leave after this year. But what these guys have done, what they have provided for Dwayne Haskins, and you mentioned it, Chris Olave, a true freshman. I mean, the cupboard is going to be bare, if you will, but it's fully stocked with talent for this upcoming season. It's going to be rough. It's going to be rough because I can see a lot of Zone 6 leaving, and unfortunately, it means Tate Martell, Matthew Baldwin, or Chris Chuganov, or whoever is going to be the starting quarterback next year is going to have a lot to try and work with. But it's a lot of talent. The Chris Olaves, the Cameron Browns, the Cameron Babbs, the Jalen Harrises, several others that can contribute to this Zone 6 come next year. But this year, oh my goodness, dude. Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm sorry, Chris. You do not throw for over 4,000 yards in a single season. And that is now the Big Ten record. No other quarterback, Chris, has thrown for over 4,000 yards in a single year and done it without the kind of receivers that he has had to throw to this year. Dwayne Haskins, unbelievable year, but
his first year starting
off
too.
To Zone 6, his first year starting. But I mean, look at the guys he's had to throw to that can get open, and a guy that can see the field the way he's done. That's why Dwayne Haskins, in his first year ever starting, it has become the single season passing yards and touchdowns record holder in Big Ten history.
Yeah. And you know who's got to be kicking themselves right now? Is Zach Smith. Zach Smith, he gets canned going into the season that the greatest passing quarterback Ohio State has ever seen and may ever see ever again takes the helm. Part of it is the Zone 6 is really talented and really great, and it's the combination of the two, having an elite wide receiver core and an elite quarterback. But they were not going to put up these kind of numbers with JT Barrett back there, right? So,
not passing.
Yeah, he gets canned, and then Zach, and then Haskins comes in and takes over. It's just unfortunate timing for him, but he's got to be sitting there saying, man, I should be getting the credit for this right now, and I am getting zero credit right now. Zero credit. But
so what was it? What was it, Chris, about this game that led Ohio State to score the most ever points they've scored against that team up north? And make it look so easy. I mean, seriously. I mean, we've kind of talked about it, to a certain degree. But I mean, the fact that, what was it? What was it? Was it mental? Was it physical? Was it both? I mean, what did you see watching this football game that Ohio State was able to do, aside from those, crisscrossing routes? We all know the Buckeyes were able to crisscross their way. But I mean, seriously, what did they do? What did they do in this game that impressed you the most?
Well, so looking at the offense, I want to point to 3 things that it could be any one of these 3. It could be a combination of them that led to this onslaught. So the first one we've already talked about. There was adjustments. Ryan Day made some nice adjustments. The crossing routes, the inside outs. Basically the faking the crossing route. They attacked their weaknesses. So like they really went after that defensive back Brandon Watson. They were hitting him all game long. Give credit to Haskins for being able to recognize that and go after.
Now
it.
wait a minute, Chris. I'm just going to say this. You just mentioned Brandon Watson. He's a fifth-year senior. Okay. Ohio State's Chris Olave, a true freshman, and made him look dumb, stupid, idiotic, complete moron on that second touchdown catch. Olave was clear to the outside and then sliced his way at the last second in front of a fifth-year senior defensive back, a true freshman, and made Brandon Watson look dumb, dude. Unbelievable touchdown catch for his second 24-yard catch of the game for Chris Olave, dude. Unbelievable.
Right. So they're going after Watson. They're doing deep balls, at a higher frequency than what they were earlier in the year, which opened things up. Some other interesting little wrinkles with the motion. There was some motion they were doing that I'd never seen before. I know they did this one thing where they'd have a guy go in motion and make this wide loop around the QB. They did that a couple times.
Yes, behind the QB, not in front of the QB, behind him. I had never seen that at all this season. At all.
So they did that a couple times. And there was some other interesting motion as well So I think they maybe they were saving it for Michigan. I don't know, but there was definitely some new wrinkles out there. So that's the one is, Day really coming out and calling a really great game, throwing some new looks, maybe confusing Michigan a little bit, going after the weaknesses. That's one. The other is, maybe Michigan is, maybe their defense is a little overrated. So let's look at this now. The last 4 years.
Overrated. Overrated. Dude, the crowd started chanting that with about 5 or 6 minutes left. Overrated.
Right. So, but the last 4 years, 5 years, including this year. So you had Michigan came in, their defense was ranked 7, 4, 1, and 3, and then 3, and then 1 again this year. What did Ohio State?
You're talking about coming into the Ohio State game. That's what Michigan's overall defense was ranked each and every year.
Right. Yeah, we're talking
under Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, with Don Brown as this vaunted coordinator, right? And what did Ohio State do in those 4 years? So they scored 42, 42, 30, and 31.
Overrated.
Yeah, and then now 60. Now 62.
Overrated.
So, So okay, there's a scheme. There's maybe Michigan's defense being overrated, and here's the third factor of how we saw this severe ass beating. I kind of think a lot of this might just be Ohio State thinks they can beat Michigan. They're like, it doesn't matter what came in. They're like, why? Of course,
mental preparation.
And Michigan doesn't think they can beat Ohio State. When that game came out and Ohio State jumped into the lead early, they had to be sitting there thinking, oh, here we go again. I mean, my God, there were 14-2 the last 16 years or something like that. I mean, a lot of these kids, they don't remember when Michigan, they weren't alive when Michigan, they were alive, but they were so young they can't remember it, when Michigan was actually able to win a few versus Ohio State. It's like as long as they've been alive, as long as their memory is going, Ohio State absolutely owned them,
Chris, I asked a couple of the guys. I asked a few of the guys throughout the week before the game. I'm like, what are your recollections of the game and the fact that, you've basically grown up in an era that Ohio State's never lost. And I mean, these guys, they're like, well, I was born in 1997. I was born in 1999. I was born in 2000.
You had to be so lucky.
And I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, you don't remember what it's like to see. I didn't say this, but these kids were not as unfortunate as you and I, Chris, to see Ohio State teams that were highly ranked, that were undefeated, that had absolutely no business losing to Michigan. These kids, they were too young to remember that, and a couple of them laughed. Demetrius Knox and Draymond Jones, and they're like, I asked Tuff Borland, I'm like, being a kid from Illinois, what's it mean? And he's like, well, it's kind of one of those things where, I saw it, but I didn't know about it until I got here, and Devon Hamilton talked about when he was being recruited by Luke Fickell and somebody else, I can't remember, but they went to Bob Evans for his recruiting visit. And they sat in Bob Evans and they said, Devon, this is what it means to play here at Ohio State. This is what it means for rivalry. And Devon Hamilton's for Pickerington, okay? For people out there that may not know where Pickerington is located from Columbus, it's like 10 minutes southeast of the city of Columbus. Pickerington is friggin' Columbus's backyard. And yet they're still having that kind of discussion with these recruits. And Devon Hamilton is like, that's what it means to come here and play at Ohio State. The coaches will sit there and talk to you during your recruiting visit about what it means to play and beat Michigan. That is where it starts in the recruiting process, Chris. And when I heard about that, I was like, that's why there's a different air when I ask Paris Campbell, what is it about, Urban Meyer and this and that? What is it about this game? And he's like, dude, there's a different air in the Woody. There's just a different feeling when it comes to this game. This game, Urban puts a specific emphasis on and has these guys playing at a different level, and that's why he's 7-0, Chris. That's why he's 7-0.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I credit Jim Tressel as well for
turning
things around, for having the pendulum swing the other way. Do you know? The Wolverines have set a school record of 14 years without a Big Ten championship. 14 years and counting. So, these, so that's another.
Damn 1997 game, Chris. Still sticks in my craw, and I hate it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, remember I said that at the beginning of the podcast that the Detroit Press said, Ohio State stole a piece of our soul Saturday. Well, you and me, we've had a little piece of our soul stolen because we were alive during the years.
Oh, my God.
I say, boy, you're so lucky.
A little piece of our soul. We've had a lot of our souls stolen. So many games.
Yeah. So I'm like a zombie walking around, but a vampire. But these kids.
But no, seriously, what, aside from that, Chris, just you, me, we're Ohio State fans. We grew up, born and raised in Ohio, and for you personally, what does a win like this mean to you? I know what it means to me, and I'm going to assume I know what it means to you, but I want to hear it from you personally, what a 62-39 win, especially, Chris, when you said that if anything, this game is going to look embarrassing, and Ohio State is going to get embarrassed by 3 touchdowns in this game. And instead, Ohio State did the embarrassing. What kind of win does this mean for you? And what kind of win does this mean for Buckeye Nation? And what kind of win, Chris, does this mean for Ohio State in the college football playoff?
Well, for me, I mean, that was one of the funnest games I've gotten to watch, one of the funnest versions of the game, with my expectations being, coming into it, like, hey, if we just lose a close one, I'll consider it a victory, because they had just given up 51 points to the 99th offense in the country the week prior. The 99th offense in the country, they gave up 51 points. So I thought, like, Michigan is just going to, are they going to punt once? They're going to walk all over this team. Because while Michigan's maybe not like lighting the world on fire on offense, they're, decent on offense, So
39 points and 401 yards, dude.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. So, it was really enjoyable. And, I want to look at what this win means to Buckeye Nation. Honestly, it means the season's a success. Like, for them to do that, even if, like, they lose a squeaker to Northwestern, I mean, I guess if they end the season on 2 straight losses or something, that would be pretty bad. But regardless of what happens, do they make the playoffs? Do they not make the playoffs and all of that? Especially if they can beat Northwestern next week, which they should. Now, we know they could lose to Northwestern as well, too, with what we've seen from this team this year. But if they can beat Northwestern next year, it'd be Big Ten champions, 12-1 at that point, with a historical whipping of a team that everybody thought was a superior Michigan team. Like, the postseason, it doesn't even matter at that point. It's been a successful year. It's been a great year at that point. So that's what this means. It's turned what could have been, basically kind of a bad year. I mean, nobody really was happy with the way this year was going, least of which was Urban Meyer. And it turned it all around. It's like, it was all worth it. Everything is right in the world at this point. And what does this mean for the college football playoffs? Do we still have to see? We could do a whole show on the college football playoffs on what this means, but it really comes down to, I think, assuming Alabama can beat Georgia. Because if Georgia beats Alabama, then we got problems. Because I think Alabama's
extreme problems.
Yeah,
I agree. Unless
Alabama just gets their dicks kicked in by Georgia, which I don't see happening. They're in. Even they've clinched. Alabama's clinched. Notre Dame's clinched. Georgia and Clemson control their own destiny. If they both win, they're in. And then you're looking at what we need Alabama to win and to knock Georgia out, and then it's we need to obviously beat Northwestern. And then hope that the committee likes us over Oklahoma. I mean, of course, it would make it a lot easier for Ohio State if Texas can beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game next weekend.
Let me tell you what. If somehow Texas pulls off another win over Oklahoma in the same season, and Alabama can beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, and regardless of how paltry of a win the Buckeyes can pull off against the Northwestern Wildcats in the Big Ten championship game, at that point, Alabama beats Georgia and Oklahoma loses, you're in. They're in.
I mean, the only other option would be UCF. But UCF is not going to be ahead of a 12-1 Ohio State Big Ten champion. I'm sorry, they're not.
No. Especially with their starting quarterback out.
Yeah, you just
out.
Yeah, you just had this week. You had number 4 Michigan lose. You had number 7 LSU get their 3rd loss. And you had number 8 Washington State lose. So you had 3 teams lose. So right there, Ohio State's going to move up 3 slots. They're going to jump UCF. So that's 4 spots.
Now,
so I put them at 6, and some
they are sixth. Just to let you know, in the AP,
right?
Ohio State did move into 6th.
Yeah,
but that's the AP. That doesn't matter in these rankings,
right? I mean, there are some analysts saying they could even this week leak Oklahoma. Certainly, shellacking the number 4 team in the country is a better win than narrowly escaping the number 13 team in the country, which is what Oklahoma did over West Virginia. I mean, a good win for them. I mean, a win over a number 13 team in the country, you'll take it, no matter, even if it's by a point, But what Ohio State did was definitely more impressive. But at the same time, Ohio State was 10, and Oklahoma was 6. So, they were well ahead. But yeah, I mean, it's we'll see. I mean, it's what's more impressive to you, big time wins, in which case you like Ohio State's resume better, or having not so ugly of losses, in which case, a narrow loss to a Texas team is tremendously better than getting shellacked by Purdue, who, is barely bowl eligible. So,
yeah, well, and here's the thing. Let's say that Alabama does lose to Georgia, and they do get pounced. Does that drop Alabama below the 4th spot in the country? Because
I think so.
If Alabama loses, now let's say pounced. What's pounced? 14 or more points?
No, 14. I think you lose by. I'm saying if they lose by 4 touchdowns, assuming now this is assuming.
So you're saying they have to lose by more than 4 touchdowns to fall below the 4th spot, Alabama?
I think so. I mean, just look what they did last year. Last year, anybody in that committee who is in the camp of Bama, they're going to be able to say,
which everybody is,
which they're going to be able to say, look what happened last year. You all didn't think we should put them in last year over Ohio State. We did, and not only did they prove themselves that they belonged there by getting out of the first round, they freaking won the whole thing.
Yeah, they won. Yeah,
so they're going to be able to point to that and be like, Alabama's been the best team all year. They have 1 loss, and it was just to Georgia, who's a really good team. They're going to have to get shellacked, and even then, let's say they lost by the same amount of points that Ohio State lost to Purdue. It's still not as bad of a loss for Alabama to lose to Georgia by several touchdowns than it is as Ohio State to lose to Purdue by several touchdowns. And the only reason why it would be not quite as bad if you're an Ohio State fan is you could say, hey, that was earlier in the year. This was yesterday, right? When you lose matters in college football. So having your last game of the year, your very last game, be one where you got shellacked is not a good look if you're trying to win a beauty contest. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So I think, barring some unforeseen, they really get it handed to them kind of thing. Bama's in, they've clinched. So yeah.
All right. So let's discuss this real quick. Alabama beats Georgia. Clemson beats Pitt. Notre Dame undefeated, 3rd ranked in the country. So you've got your 1, 2, 3. And Georgia, who is 4th, who is undoubtedly going to move up to 4 in the college football playoff rankings coming into this coming weekend. They lose, but Alabama wins. All right, Alabama beats Georgia. Clemson beats Pitt. Like I said, Notre Dame's undefeated. Oklahoma avenges their only season loss in the Big 12 championship game to Texas. And Ohio State beats let's just say Northwestern, number 14 right now. Let's just say, they move up 2, maybe 3 spots, maybe 4 at best. But let's just say they're 16th. Number 16, Northwestern, who's 8-4, but 8-1 in the Big Ten, and Ohio State beats them by 10 points. But yet Oklahoma avenges their only season loss to Texas, and they're going to take a few different other aspects into account. If Oklahoma wins, let's just say Oklahoma kicks a last-second field goal. Let's just say screw 10 points. Let's just say Oklahoma kicks a last-second field goal against Texas to avenge their only season loss. And Ohio State, kind of convincingly wins over Northwestern by 10 points, who's an 8-4 team. Texas is a 9-3 team and ranked a little higher. Is Ohio State screwed? I think Ohio State's screwed.
Probably. But at the same time, I think Ohio State, people want Ohio State in there more. Ohio State's a bigger brand. It draws more eyeballs. They're viewed as being more talented. Urban Meyer's a bigger name coach. They kind of want Ohio State in there. And I heard that the odds are if both Ohio State and Oklahoma and Alabama win out, if all those three teams win out, they actually have the odds of Ohio State making the playoffs as being higher than Oklahoma's. Now, how they could know that, I have no idea. Because how do you predict what's going on?
I don't
in a small committee.
Exactly.
But I heard that. Yeah. So, but really, it's going to come down to what those people in the committee. You need a majority in that committee to like Ohio State better than Oklahoma, and the thumping of Michigan did an awful lot for that resume. Without it, if they just narrowly beat Michigan, there's no way. Oklahoma's going for sure because of that albatross, which is the Purdue loss. But with thumping Michigan, that's a really big feather in Ohio State's cap. And so then it's just what means more to you, a thumping Michigan or not having a really nasty loss? So I don't know. You could make an argument for either team. Oklahoma has been, they're a pretty big name program too. So, we'll see. If Ohio State doesn't make it and they go to the Rose Bowl and play the Pac-12 winner, I don't know where that would be, Utah or Washington State or who that would be, but
not
I'd be okay
Washington State. It's Washington and Utah.
Is Washington and Utah?
Yeah, because Washington beat Utah State. Yeah, beat them up in Pullman in the Snow Bowl. But nonetheless, yeah.
So I would be fine with that. Ohio State. I would love to see Ohio State get in there because I think we saw this offense put up 62 points in the number one defense in the country. I would like to see what that would look like against Alabama. I'd like to see what that would look like against Notre Dame or Clemson. Would they win? I don't know. But I think that they could get Alabama into a shootout, and that if they got them into a shootout, they would have a chance. You know what I mean? I don't think that's crazy to think that. So if you can, if Michigan is the number one defense in the country and they were able to get 62 on them, then, they've got a chance versus anybody. Even if their defense is terrible, they've got a chance versus anybody because, they could get in a shootout and then it's good luck trying to win a shootout against this team. So I would love to see them get in there because I think they would have a great chance. You always want that chance. You have zero chance if you're not in. But I would still be happy and think it was a great season if they beat Northwestern and then go on and play in the Rose Bowl. Even if they lose in the Rose Bowl or whatever, just the fact that this, where they were, the controversy at the beginning of the year, the poor play all year long, the narrowly squeaking by, to then come out and record-settingly beat Michigan and win the Big Ten. I would be happy. I did not envision this being the way the season would end. So, I was, it was kind of a dark place there for a while with how the direction this team was going. And I feel good now. That's what this game meant.
I think that, quite frankly, Urban Frank Meyer likes to save the best for last. Do you remember that old Vanessa Williams song? You go and save the best for last. I can't sing like her at all. But do you remember? I mean,
it's a pretty song. It's a touching song.
It is. It's a very touching song. You know, I was talking with a local Columbus Dispatch sports reporter, and we're traveling down the elevator, and going to the right after the game to the interview session, and he just looks at me and he just kind of shakes his head. He's like, "Where has this team been all year?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And he was like, "This is the Ohio State football team that we all expected to see." And I was like, "I know." And I laughed, and I just kind of looked at him, and I was like, "I don't know. I mean, other than Urban likes to save the best for last." Like he reels it in almost throughout the entire year.
They were just sandbagging the whole year so that they could slip one over on khaki pants.
Chris, I don't know. I mean, why did it take this long to see almost a complete offensive and defensive game? Even though, yes, this defense gave up 39 points and 401 yards. To your point earlier in the discussion, they were just flying all over the place. They were creating problems. They were getting sacks. I mean, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, a blocked punt that was scooped and taken in for a touchdown. I mean, just the whole thing, just this whole game. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, Urban, you go and save the best for last. And I don't know. I don't know if he was sandbagging. I mean, this question obviously not asked of him after the game, but I mean, what other reason could he give? I mean, here we go. And you want to know what, Chris? Here is a Northwestern game prediction. I wanted to talk to you about this because I think we're getting near the end of the podcast as it is. So I'm going to throw out my Northwestern prediction right now. Ohio State is going to look like crap against Northwestern. I'm serious, dude.
They shot their wad.
The Ohio State team that we saw against Michigan, we are not going to see the same thing against Northwestern. And I do predict an Ohio State win, but I don't think they're going to win this game by more than 10 points. And they're going to look like quasi crap. They're going to look like the same Ohio State team that we saw giving up long touchdown runs to Oregon State, TCU, Minnesota. I mean, they're going to look like just another average football team, but they're going to win the game and be the Big Ten conference champs. But that because they looked like crap winning the Big Ten championship against an 8-4 Northwestern team. That's going to be enough to keep them out of playing for the national championship, or at least getting a spot in the Final Four. That's my opinion.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Here's the thing that's interesting, and this is one of the things that I thought about, when I was looking at Ohio State's chances versus Michigan, is the things Michigan does on their offense just so happens to be the things that Ohio State defends well. Michigan likes to play man ball and run right at you. And you know who else likes to do that? Mark D'Antonio. And look how well that worked out for him. Ohio State actually looked like world beaters when they were playing Michigan State, right? Their defense just completely shut them down. And it was like fool's gold at the time. We found out quickly when they then played Nebraska and Maryland, who like to run more of a spread, And then it's like, okay, all the problems that we thought were fixed are clearly not, So then we go into this Michigan game, and they come right at you. And Ohio State, even though they did give up 39 points, but, it felt like they were doing enough, defensively to win the game. Northwestern's they're a spread team. They're more closer to Maryland than they are to Michigan State. And I think they're going to get some points. I don't think that this is, and I think also like it's going to be hard to follow up on what they just did. I would like to say, hey, we're looking at now the start of like the end of the 2014 magical season where, they're just going to come out and lay the wood like they did on Wisconsin and then run through the playoffs. I would love to say that, but I think it's probably more like we just happen to match up our offense. What we do on offense is what Michigan is really bad at stopping. What Michigan does on offense is what Ohio State just happens to be pretty good at stopping. And everything just kind of lined up, the mental aspect of it, all of that, and you had this blowout loss. They're not going to have that same kind of juice for this game. I mean, it's just, and it's the matchups aren't as good, and Northwestern's the kind of team that can drag you down to their level. They Northwestern it up,
and that's Pat Fitzgerald for you. I mean, this is Pat Fitzgerald. Come on, do not discount him as being a solid head coach. I mean, Ohio State 8-1 in the Big Ten, Northwestern 8-1 in the Big Ten. I mean, they both have the same conference record, and Pat Fitzgerald just lost all of his non-conference games. But otherwise, solid head coach, solid football team. Do not overlook the Wildcats.
Yeah. I'm thinking like they're gonna score. I think they're looking at maybe. I'm gonna give them 31. I'm gonna say Ohio State 38, Northwestern 31. And so they don't make the spread. But, Fitzgerald, he probably coached, the spread's like 13 points. So, Ohio State has been outcoached every game this year pretty much, except for, when they're playing Michigan. I mean, maybe they outcoach Rutgers. I don't know. I mean, Rutgers, the talent.
I mean, the fourth-ranked team in the country, and that's the only coach that you have a definitive, mental thing over.
Right. So
isn't that crazy?
I suspect they're not going to outcoach Fitzgerald and his staff. I just don't see it. They've shown that they usually don't. they're not up to out coaching these other coaches. So, with that in mind, I'd love to see them come out and just lay the wood and make their case to be in the playoffs. But I'm going to be happy with a Big Ten championship with a 7-point win. So 38-31.
All right. I said that Ohio State would not win by more than 10 points. You're saying 38-31, and I mean, that seems like a very apropos score range for the two. I'm going to go Ohio State 52 to 45.
Wow. Well, I can see it. I mean, they gave up freaking 51 to Maryland and 39 to Michigan, and you know what I mean? So I could see it.
52 to 45. Yeah, I think it's going to get high scoring. I think it's going to get weird. Ultimately, Ohio State wins the football game, but Oklahoma, Chris, gets their revenge on their only loss of the year over the Texas Longhorns in the second rendition of the year. Red Rivalry Shootout, Red Rivalry Showdown, Red Rivalry Rivalry, Red River, bleh, whatever it's freaking called. I don't give a crap. But Oklahoma will beat Texas. And I think Oklahoma gets in over Ohio State. I think Ohio State gets shut out again. I hate to say it, man. I really hate to say it, but I think Alabama smashes Georgia. Clemson crushes Pitt. Notre Dame gets in because they're Notre Dame and they're undefeated and everybody loves Notre Dame. And because Georgia gets beat, they're a 2-loss non-conference champ at number 4 in the country. That pushes them down. And then Oklahoma gets their revenge on Texas. And Ohio State does win the Big Ten championship, but that puts them at 5th in the country. Oklahoma's 4, and there you go. And I hate to say it, but
I'm a Tommy Herms fan this weekend. Hook 'em horns, baby.
Hook 'em horns, Tommy Squirms. Hook 'em horns. Oh, my goodness. Well, hey, my brother, before we jump off the microphones, anything else you can think of that we didn't talk about that you want to touch on after this huge 62-39 Ohio State win over the Smelly Rodents?
You get me distracted when I hear your sweet, sweet voice talking about what I'd like to touch on, but I will close it out how I always do and just remind folks that I do have another podcast, Choice Conversations. It's a personal development podcast. You can find me at choiceconversations.com or anywhere that you would find podcasts, and I will come check it out, and I'll help you to improve your life in all areas. So, Choice Conversations, check it out.
My man, the intergalactic Buckeye fan. Be sure to check him out at choiceconversations.com. Hit him up on Twitter, I believe, sir, at Choice Convo. To have a choice conversation with the intergalactic Buckeye fan, especially going into this Big Ten championship football week where the Buckeyes need a big win over the Northwestern Wildcats to at least stay relevant, Chris, in the conversation to be in the top 4, because
if they lose to Northwestern, I'm going to be so pissed off. Like, seriously, you just bumped Michigan.
I'm telling you what.
It's on the table. It is definitely on the table.
Do not expect a loss, but expect a very hard-fought, close win. And that's what I'm saying right now. I really think 52-45, crazy, hard-fought, close win by the Buckeyes. But, Chris, a win is a win is a win.
I'll take it.
And as Al Davis once said, Chris, just win, baby. Just win. This episode of the Buckeye Leafcast also brought to you by Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC. It's not clean until it's Christy clean. Be sure to visit her Facebook page at Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC. And it's also brought to you by Columbus Wired for your fill of Central Ohio sports and beyond. Be sure to check us out at columbuswired.net. So, Chris, you say, as well as I, Buckeyes win over Northwestern for the Big Ten championship this weekend.
Yes, sir.
What happens if you're wrong? What happens if I'm wrong?
At that point, it's, buy some stock in Jack Daniels. I don't know.
I buy that every week, dude. Come on. If it happens, yeah, it's right. It's right, Buckeye fans.
It will not ruin my life if they lose. I will say that. Life goes on.
It's right, because, well, you are an inspirational person, and that's why people got to reach out to you and get a little better about their lives. Reach out to the intergalactic Buckeye fan. Let them help you out. if the Buckeyes lose, okay, we're talking about one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Ohio State fans on the face of the planet, if not the entire galaxy, the Milky Way, Pluto, and beyond. That's why he's the intergalactic Buckeye fan. If we lose and you are feeling down about yourself, you reach out to this man. He's going to help you out. And that's why, Chris, you are the intergalactic Buckeye fan. And that's why, if people need to have a choice conversation with you, you are the one that you need to have it with.
Oh, you're too kind.
You're my boy, Blue. I love you, bro.
Love you too, man.
On that note, let's leave them like we always do after a big Michigan win going into the Big Ten Championship. Chris Stefanik! Away! Go Bucks!
I want to go back to Ohio State.